Memories, memories. Long ago, in a cave on the side of a famous mountain in the old world, most men lived in huts and cabins and stone fortresses. Only wise men choose to inhabit caves, and I went to visit one of them. A monk revered for his sagacity and especially for his knowledge in the gods and their myriad incarnations. I stayed with the holy man for a cycle of the pocked and pitted moon. We drank bitter tea, we smoked psychedelic plants and read from crumbling tomes scriven with quaint drawings of deities and demons. It was disappointing. I could not be any of these things, yet there was little doubt he and I were different as fish and stone. The monk was the first of them to notice. I did not concern myself. In those days my power was irresistible. Let me but wave my hand, and so mote it be. If I desired a thought from a passing mind, I plucked it fresh as sweet fruit from a budding branch. If I fancied a soothing rain, the firmament would split and sunder. If I hungered, flesh would prostrate itself before me, unless I fancied a pursuit. Then it would bound and hide, or stand and bare teeth or rippling steel, or suffocate my patience with tears, oaths and pleas. But in the end, I had my flesh. That the monk guessed what I strove to submerge. As much from myself as the world at large did not alarm me, it was the questions that pecked at my waking thoughts, crept into my slumberous phantasms, annoying questions. Stark recollection of a time predating the slow glide of eons in the primeval brine. The images would alight unasked. I would glimpse at the red truth of my condition. Purple dust and niveous spiral galaxy. A plain of hyaline rock broken by pygoidal clusters ringed in fire, temperatures sliding a groove betwixt boiling and freezing. The sweet huff of methane in my bellowing lungs, sunrise so blinding it would have seared the eyes from any living creature. And I knew there were memories layered behind and beyond, inaccessible to human perception, that I wore as a workman wears boots, gloves, and warning mantle. To see these visions in their nakedness would boggle and baffle, or rive the sanity from my fragile intellect. Surely as a hot breath douses a candle. Ah, but there were memories. A phantom chain, endless as the coil of chemicals comprising the mortal genome. Fussed to the limits of calculation, I try not to think too much. I try not to think too much about buried things anyhow. Better to consider the cycle that binds me in its thrall. From the deeds there is a season, spring, summer, autumn, and winter. Each time I change it, it becomes clearly what precisely maintains its pattern. That I am a fragment of something much larger is obvious. The monk was the first to grasp it. There was a story he mentioned. How the priests prayed to their gods, good and bad, to look upon men and bestow their munificent blessings. They even prayed to terrible Shiva the destroyer, who slept in his celestial place. They prayed because to slight Shiva in their supplication was to risk his inconsiderable fury. Yet the priests knew if Shiva opened his eye and gazed upon the world, it would be destroyed. But in the spring I walk with others of my kindred shell, nagged by fullness unsubstantiated. In the summer I see my shadow change, and then I learn to blossom and suckle the pleasurable nectar of all I survey. Nail me to a cross, burn me in a fire, a legend will rise up from the ashes. Invent stories to frighten your children. Sacrifice tender young virgins to placate my concupiscent urges. Revile me in your temples, call upon Almighty God to throw me down. No good, no good. How could he see you, if not for me? How could he hear thy lament, or smell thy sadness, or taste thee? In the autumn, like a slow heavy tide, purpose resurges, and I remember what the seasons portend. A wane of the power, a dwindling reserve of strength, Like a malign flower that flourishes in a tropical heat, I wither before the advance of frost and blacken and die, my seeds buried in the muck at the bottom of the ocean to survive the cruel winter. I know what I am. I understand the purpose. I left the farm and disappeared. One more name on the ominous list haunting law enforcement officers in several states. I vanished myself to the Barron coast, a simple feat for anyone who wants to try. An old man alone on a plain, no one cared, they never do. There is an old native ghost town on a stretch of desolate beach, Quonset huts with windows shattered or boarded, grains of snow slithering past open doors, when the frigid wind gusts along, moaning through abandoned FAA towers coloured navy grey and rust. The federal government transplanted the villagers to new homes 13 miles up the beach. I don't see anyone when I leave the shack I have appropriated and climb the cliffs to regard the sea being rumpled, a dark, scaly hide marred by plates of thickening ice. Individual islets today, a solid sheet in a few weeks, extending to the horizon, or forever. I watch the stars as twilight slips down from the sky, a painless veil pricked with beads and sparks, unfriendly stars. Eventually, I return to the shack. It takes me a very long time. I am an old man. My shuffle and panting breath are not part of the theatre. The shack waits, and I light kerosene lamp and huddle by the Bunsen burner to thaw these antiquitous bones. I do not hunger for much this late in the autumn of my cycle, and nobody is misfortunate enough to happen by, so I eschew sustenance another day. The radio is old too. Scratchy voice from a station in Nome recites the national news. I pay a lot of attention to this when my time draws nigh, looking for a sign, a symbol of tribulations to come. The United Nations is bombing some impoverished country into submission. War criminals in Bosnia are apprehended in Peru. A satellite orbiting Mars has gone offline, but NASA is quick to reassure the investors that it is all routine. In Ethiopia, famine is tilling people under by the thousands. An explosion caused a plane to crash into the Atlantic. Labour unions are threatening a crippling strike. A bizarre computer virus is hamstringing 2 major corporations, and so on and so on. The news is never good, and I'm not sure if there is anything that I wanted to hear. I close my eyes and see a tinsel and sequined probe driving out beyond the cold chunk of Pluto. A stone tossed into the bottomless pool, trailing bubbles. I see Kabbalists hunched over their ciphers, Catholics on their knees before the effigy of Christ, biologists with scalpels and microscopes, astronomers with their mighty lenses pointed at the skies, atheists and philosophers with fingers pointed at themselves. Military men stroke the cool bulk of their latest killing weapon and feel a touch closer to peace. I see men caressing the crystal and wire and silicon of machines that tell them what to believe about laws of physics, the number to slay chaos in its den. I see housewives scrambling to pick the kids up from soccer practice, a child on the porch gazing up and up to regard the same piece of sky glimmering in my window. He wonders what is up there. He wonders if there is a monster under his bed. No monsters there. Instead, they lurk at school, at church, in his uncle's brain. Everyone is looking for the answer. They do not want to find the answer, trust me. Unfortunately, the answer will find them. Life. It's like one of those unpleasant nature documentaries. To be the cameraman instead of the subject, eh? My skin warns me that it is almost the season. I dreamed for a while, but I do not recall the content. The radio is dead, faint drone from the ancient speaker. The kerosene wick has burned to cinders. A flash from the emerald-coloured bottle catches my eye, full of cologne. I seldom indulge in cosmetics. The colour attracted me and I brought it here. I'm a creature of habit. When my affectations of evolution decay, habit remains steadfast. Dark outside on the wintry beach. Sunrise is well off and it might not come again. The frozen pebbles crack beneath my heels as I stagger towards the canvas of obsidian water, leaving strange and unsteady tracks on the skeletal shore. There is a sense of urgency building. Mine, or others. I strip my clothes, and as I go, I end up on the cusp of the sea, naked and shriveled. The stars are feral, they shudder. A ripple is spreading across the heavens, and the stars are dancing wildly in its pulsating wake. A refulgence that should not be seen begins to seep from the widening fissure. Here is a grand and terrible happening to write of on the wall of a cave. God opening his eye to behold the world in all its little works. I've seen this before. Let others marvel in my place, if they dare. My work is done, now to sleep. When I mount from the occluded depths, what will I behold? What will be my clay, and how shall I be given to mould it? I slip into the welcoming flank of the sea and allow the current to tug my shell out and down into the abyssal night. It isn't really as cold as I feared. Thoughts are fleeting as bubbles and the light. The shell begins to flake, to peel, to crumble, and soon I will wriggle free of its fragile vessel. But one final kernel of wisdom gained through the abomination of time and service. A pearl to leave gleaming upon its empty shore, safely assured that no one shall come by to retrieve it or puzzle over the contradiction. Men are afraid of the devil, but there is no devil, just me, and I do as I am bid. It is God that should turn their bowels to soup. Whatever God is, he or it created us for amusement. It's too obvious. Just as he created the prehistoric sharks, the dinosaurs, and the humble mechanism that is a crocodile, and Venus flytraps, black widow spiders, and human beings. Just as he created a world where every organism survives by rending a weaker organism, where procreation is imperative. A leech's anaesthetic against agony and death and disease that accompany the sticky congress of mating. A sticky world because God dwells in a dark and humid place. A world of appetite, for God is ever hungry. I know, because I am his mouth.